Today's guest is Roy Vandermull, who is a coach and facilitator. And Coach Roy helps entrepreneurs, business owners, and executives overcome performance anxiety, overwhelm, and burnout. He uses various modalities to tailor a growth mindset and helps people navigate through the challenges and barriers that they are facing. He also uses a unique personality behavior style AI app to customize all of his coaching and to ensure that the desired result is exactly what his clients get. So, Roy, thank you very much for being on. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Dresco. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I mean, this is it's pretty cool because like you actually do a lot of the similar work that I do. So I'm excited to dive into this. And I'm always a fan when, people walk their own talk. Like not everybody that I reach out to says yes to do this, oftentimes citing like, oh, I can't be seen in this light. So the fact that you are somebody to step up and kind of have that courage to be seen in this way, I always respect. So number one, thank you for doing that. And then number two, I'd love for you to just give us some background on who you are and how you got to doing what you're doing.
Well, who I am is a very long story, so I'll try to make it as concise as possible. But I'm actually an immigrant to Canada, and 45 years ago I came to Canada because I fell in love with this wonderful French Canadian woman, and studied here as well. Actually, my background is in accounting, and but after many years in accounting, I decided. Actually, I came across an opportunity to actually help clients with some teaching, and so I got involved in adult education, and from adult education, I got into coaching as well. So it's a long journey, but I think I found my passion, and I also found my purpose on this world, and that is ultimately being a servant. And I really focus on servant leadership, being a servant and helping people, and in particular, starting entrepreneurs to make a great economic impact for themselves. And as such, I basically continue then also to grow in my own business and in my own personal growth. I believe, and that's why I'm here, Drasco. I believe in collaboration, and I believe in growth. And so, if we're not growing all the time, on our deathbed, we may say, "Oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that," and then it's too late, right? So we need to continue to grow, and that's why I'm here, and that's who I am.
Beautiful. Love it. I definitely subscribe to a lot of those same values. So yeah, I am all for that. So yeah, I mean, in that case, I think we just dive right into it. And why don't you kind of tell me like what are the top challenges or top problems that you are facing right now?
Well, one of the challenges that I'm facing, and I'm very transparent with this, and I've decided to be very transparent with this about 10 years ago, when I discovered that I actually suffer from depression, and it's a mental health issue that I have found out that some of the even successful business owners, they suffer from depression. And um, uh, and when depression actually comes into effect, it's because of overwhelm and because of so many things that needs to be done in business, and that becomes so overwhelming, and anxiety comes into play as well. So and then it starts to become, you know, counterproductive. And so depression is definitely something that I would like to take in consideration when I do my coaching. Um, so that's basically why I'm here as well, is to actually find out, okay, that's one of my challenges, and I have overcome, I believe, some of those challenges. But I also believe that we are cyclical. So, in other words, in our, we as human beings, we go through cycles and cycles of life. And when I look at nature, there's four, especially here in Canada, at least still, we have 4 seasons. And so we go through those cycles. And certainly depression for me is a cyclical thing. And I think I'm not alone. And so that's why I do what I do, is helping entrepreneurs, specifically starting entrepreneurs when there's so much to do and the overwhelm is there, to help them navigate through that.
Absolutely. And I respect you for diving into that because I think it is like one of those very real things that nobody really talks about.
Right.
It's certainly been something that's been a major theme in my life, and it was a contributor to like the fall and like the imploding of my first business. And I mean, I've come a long way since then, and I haven't had a depressive episode in a long time, but those things are very real in entrepreneurship. So I definitely agree with you on that. So when you say that, okay, like you've identified that, I'm suffering from depression. I know how badly this affects people. I just want to help them with it. I've overcome some parts of it, but not like all of it. So what do you feel like is still remaining for you?
Well, what is remaining for me is to create consistency. Like anything else, especially in business, when we want to do certain things, there has to be consistent approaches, a systematic approach that is consistent. And even though I have self-diagnosed about depression 10 years ago, I'm still working this through. I'll be honest with you, there are days, gloomy days, because it's also related to weather and climate. I have to admit that sometimes there are days that I just want to stay in bed. What can I say? So it's something that I still struggle with, and so it's okay. And sometimes it's okay, but sometimes there are certain things that you need to do. Um, I'll give you an example. So when you sign up for a program, obviously there are some particular steps that you need to take and certain, deadlines to meet, etc. When you have a contract, there's certain steps that you need to take and certain deadlines that you need to meet. So it cannot interfere with, your own emotional and psychological state. There has to be a particular system in place. So that's still, I'm still working on that.
So if we got just a bit more specific with that. So I don't have or can't create the consistency. So you said, okay, sign up courses or for courses and fulfillment. So just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, you mean consistency in completing the course, implementing the course, consistency in fulfilling on a particular contract or not waiting till like the last minute to do it. Like, is that what you mean when you say
That's
consistency?
that's that's exactly what I mean. Yes. So in other words, if there's a course content that says, well, or milestones within that course content says by such and such a date, you need to have finished a particular project. Well, yes, that could be a motivator to get out of bed, but there's that struggle between I really don't feel like it. There's something, the challenge is really to get up, and the challenge is then really to motivate yourself to actually do that particular project. And sometimes that is not happening.
Got it. And then it's that lack of motivation to actually do the thing accumulated over time that leads to the depression. And it's just not
Yeah,
like it's a matter of how bad do I fall into that? Like, is that accurate for you or no?
yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So we can create systems, and I do have many systems. We can do meditation, we can do visualization. We can do all kinds of different things, because it's recommended. Okay, if you feel this way, you do it this way. It's still up to that particular individual to do it. I mean, the tool is there, but how do you motivate yourself? So it's self-motivation to actually use that particular tool that is out there, that is made available to you to actually do that. And that is, and that's a self-talk, if you will. It's a talk that you need to create with, you talk about head trash, and that's exactly what it is. It's head trash. It's a conversation that you need to have within yourself to overcome that particular low emotional state, if you will.
Got it. So it's like, even if I have a tool that I know generally works for me, like a particular meditation or some sort of process of reframing or changing my story, then the problem becomes I'm unwilling, or there's a part of me that's unwilling to actually just use a tool that I know is going to help anyway.
That's right.
And then that loops the cycle.
And you
Okay.
know what? It also relates, for example, like people say, well, when you're depressed, you need to have exercise, because that's what most people say. Get the adrenaline going, get those hormones going. And yeah, of course, it helps. Once you're doing it, it helps. However, to get from point A to point B, to actually, put on your shoes and start actually running or start actually walking, that gap, that's where the struggle is, and that's where the challenge is. And that's why I think a coach is important, because, and this has helped me quite a bit, where you have an accountability partner who actually calls you at that particular time that you made that commitment. 7 o'clock in the morning, I have to start walking. Okay, at 7 o'clock in the morning, I got this phone call. It's not a wake-up call because I'm already awake, but I got this wake-up call from my accountability partner. It says, okay, do you have your shoes on? Are you ready? That extra little push, it works.
Right. And I guess then the question becomes, why are the standards for somebody else calling you higher than for you doing the same thing for yourself?
Yes, that's a good question, Draco.
Yeah. So I think that's the part that is ultimately behind this, because once the external pressure is gone, right? So I have a deadline, somebody calls me at 7 a.m., says, do you have your shoes on? Standards are higher when I have to answer to somebody else. So right off the bat, your power is in the external. But as
Yes.
soon as that goes away, and or you have the opportunity to exercise your own power, there is this weight that pushes down on you that you are powerless against, or don't have enough power to push over.
Well, see, as we speak, I have this image. I really like to, think in images. And most people do that anyway. But so I see myself on a bicycle. I mean, this is my mental image, on a bicycle going uphill. And it's a fairly big hill, by the way. And then somebody is actually pushing me up the hill. Once I am almost there, he can or she can let me go, because I know that I'm going to be on that hill, on top of the hill, because afterwards I can just let go and do it on my own. You see? So that's why I believe, even in my coaching practice, when I talk with people, I always put accountability as one of the important elements. Accountability to yourself. And how do you get that? Well, and that's why I believe in collaboration. You may need some additional help to get where you want to be. Les Brown, by the way, said, when he started out his particular practice, public speaking career, he said, he had a dream, and at one point in time he was stuck, And then he got involved with people who could actually showed him how to move forward. And then off he goes, right? And so that's exactly what I have experienced works for me. I'm not depressed, by the way, right now.
Oh, I think, yeah, at least that's coming off, or you're doing a good job at putting on a different face. But yeah, I wouldn't feel that's the case either. Um, so okay, if we just zoom out a little bit before we dive into like some of the specifics. So I have these cycles of like not being able to be self-motivated. That creates this lack of consistency. Like if you had to zoom out now, like why is all of this a problem for you?
Well, I think when we want to generate revenues or when we want to generate clients, once you have clients, obviously they like to depend on you. So dependability factor is important. If you can only cancel so many appointments if you have when you have clients, and that boils down to this: if you cancel too many times, your reputation goes down as well. So you're not dependable. Dependability in any profession, I believe, is important. So yes, we can have understanding and acknowledge maybe particular situations, but if there's no consistency uh, and follow through and follow up on those particular processes, then it will suffer in one form or another. So
Got it. So I guess then there's two ways. So you said, okay, dependability for clients, meaning when you get into these depressive states, you tend to cancel client calls. So like that, as far as my reputation and just having the follow through and dependability to be present for my clients, like that's not there. So canceling sessions is one thing. And then it also sounded like at the beginning, the consistency to actually do the work needed to get more clients. Like, is that also accurate?
that's correct. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So when one's want when a when a person or entrepreneur wants to grow their business, that dependability and that accountability factor has to be incorporated in our daily lives. And if that is missing or actually not being addressed at all, then one will not grow because there's stagnation and people start to wonder, well, why is there stagnation here? I don't understand. And I had asked that question many times over. I said, okay, well, why is it that way? I was very fortunate that I had a great team. I assembled and surrounded myself with a great team. So they were able to, where I slacked off, if you will, and that's a good word actually, just slacked off, right? Where I slacked off, the team was able to pick it up. Well, that's okay for a while, but not all the time.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like leadership goes, like then you're setting the bar for what is appropriate in the organization. So 110%. So if we flip gears a little bit, kind of on that more business level, like what happens if you eliminate this pattern? Like, well, how is your life actually different on the other side of this?
Well, you just hit the nail right on its head because then that leadership characteristic or the leadership component becomes so much stronger, and then teams or people, will resonate with you more. People will also be more attracted to you.
So, and I'm just gonna interrupt one second just for sake of clarity. So, one of the things that your brain tends to do quite often is like I will ask a question about you personally, and then you kind of answer a little bit of the question in like I terms, like I do this,
Okay.
and then your brain right away goes into people, we, you, they, like it kind of goes into second and third person.
Okay.
And I'm inferring that you're describing things about yourself, but I don't actually
Get
know. So my invitation to you is, like, if your brain does that, and oftentimes that is protection, where like we will speak in generalities because it keeps us at arm's length from kind of facing that truth. So my invitation to you is, like, if when you are answering, to stick to as many I statements as you can, as
okay.
opposed to allow your brain to go into that resistance mode.
Okay.
So is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I've been trained not to use a lot of I statements, but because well, anyway, so as I said, I'm basically trained not to use I statements because of the coaching environment. But when, of
Well, and
course,
I'm assuming again, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, if I'm coaching you, I don't necessarily want to be talking about myself. Like, I want to keep the
right,
perspective of the other. Okay. And that's exactly my point, right? So I asked you a question, or I made an observation about where your brain goes to when you describe yourself.
yeah,
And the immediate response was, well, when I talk to other people, like, this is how I should respond because it's better for other people,
right,
right? So your brain has a very interesting way of keeping things at arm's length, almost like a protection mechanism, right? Because there's more safety in saying, like, if people can't be self-motivated and they have a team, then the team suffers because it's bad leadership,
right,
versus replacing all of that with, well, when I'm not self-motivated, my team sees it and it's a reflection of my own leadership. Like, that stings a lot more, even though both statements could potentially be true. So
right.
what lands for you there, or does it land for you?
Well, if you want me to focus on the I statements, which is good. I mean, I have no problems with that. I can talk about myself quite a bit actually. um, and it's interesting that you just highlight about protectionism, and that is something that I maybe need to look into because yeah, this is kind of an interesting observation. Thank you, Drasko.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So if we then brought that back to, because ultimately, like, this show is about you, right? Like, it's about highlighting you,
Okay.
because I think what is personal is also universal, right? Like, it's the thing we personally struggle with is actually what we universally can, like, relate to.
Yeah.
As kind of the premise, one of them anyway, of like why it is that I do here and why I want the focus to actually be on the individual. That's one, but then two is exactly what we just spoke about, which is that protection. And this happens in client calls all the time. So I'm only highlighting it to bring to your attention and your awareness, because that's, you can only change what you can see.
Yeah.
Um, so if we bring it back to kind of what we started this with, right? There was this depression that is interrelated with this lack of self-motivation and like this lack of power to get over that hump. That's creating a lack of consistency, which shows up both in you getting new clients, and not consistent in the work to get new clients, and then not consistent or not dependable in the fulfillment that you have with current clients. So my question to you at that point was, okay, well, like, who are you if you eliminated this powerlessness against self-motivation? Like, what is behind that limitation?
Well, I think I would be the person that is really tapping into my full potential.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the essence, and that would be definitely the answer. If I were not to, if I were never depressed, or if I was never um, able to, well, let's reverse it. If I was always able to be dependable, and if I was uh, able to be consistent in my delivery of my promise, or yeah, of my objectives and promises, then I would say A, it would be an addition to happiness, and B, it would be also a consistent state of being that allows me to really explore more of my potentiality.
Got it. So I'd be able to live up to my potential. I would be more dependable in how I deliver things to clients. I'd be more consistent with how I get new clients. I would be in a state of happiness. So out of that state, out of being more consistent, what would you actually create?
Oh, I would create a legacy. I would create also a reputation that that precedes me with, oh, this person is one of a kind, which I am anyway, but one of a kind, but is being recognized as one of a kind or dependable, truth to his word, and certainly a person that people would say that he's always it's an honor to be in this particular presence of Roy. So because he's always happy, right? So there's the energy that he exudes is always uplifting. Um, there's no masks. Well, here we go. So I have no masks. In other words, my true and authentic self is being expressed because I have overcome the pseudo self or the fake self, which is masked by, the depression and the challenges that I had.
Yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense. It's a beautiful description of like what actually is on the other side of depression, right? Like you could actually be your full self because you're not having to just kind of operate and stay alive under this boulder of like powerlessness. So I actually understand that because your depression actually manifested very similar to how mine did. So I agree with you on that. And like the original question was actually what you would create from that state. And
Well,
again, where your brain went to was how would people see me? They would
yeah,
see me as uplifting. They would see me as authentic. They would see me with no mask. They would know the real me,
right.
right?
Because
So
because that's how I feel. Because that's exactly the picture that I am. I mean, now we're getting into more the intrinsic value of how I see myself once that challenge, of course, is lifted. And I see myself as being the authentic self, the real me, without any masks, as I said, and without any masks, and exude that energy of always being happy and uplifting, etc. There's and because of that, there's there is an outcome that is inevitable because if I and this I have experienced that many times over too, but if I am feeling good about myself, it is inevitable that other people feel good being around me and feel good about themselves, possibly because I feel good about myself. It's an energetic transference, if you will, from me to you. And if I can do this on a consistent basis, as we said before, a very consistent basis, and eliminate even that challenge of being depressed and feeling low and etc. etc. I personally will bring happiness to the world as well.
absolutely, I agree with you that whether it's like the depression is contagious or the happiness is contagious,
That's
right? So it works both ways, and it's kind of the contagiousness doesn't care what your actual state is. So I agree with you 100% on that. And because again, this is like the third time that I have to ask the same question. So like, what would you create? Like, would you do anything? Like, I know you would feel different. That's abundantly clear, and it's a beautiful image, and I agree with it. And it's kind of like when I asked you about the problems, it was, well, I can't get clients. I'm not dependable with the ones that I do have, so that's obviously limiting how much, I'm assuming, and we didn't say it directly, but I'm assuming like how much revenue I actually end up making. So would you create anything different in your business or no?
Would I create something different, or would I create something different in my business? In what way? Because I do get clients, but it's once I have clients, I need to be very, very careful in terms of how I schedule things, how I because of the cyclical cycles that I'm facing. I am now aware of my cyclical cycles. So when August, I'll give you an example. When August comes, I know something is coming. I still don't know when, though. It could be the next day, or it could be in September, or it could be in October for that matter, but it's coming. So I need to start planning and scheduling certain things in advance sometimes to actually say, okay, well, if I when I go through that particular cycle, I need to be absolutely sure when I do get clients in that cycle that I need to protect the clients that I get from the challenges that I face, right?
Got it. So I guess, okay, then if we dive into that, so it's basically that there's an inherent belief, there's an inherent assumption that like this is coming, kind of like, okay, at some point it's going to rain. I just don't know when it's going to rain.
Right.
Right. So the inherent belief then is I actually have no choice on whether or not I'm depressed.
We always have a choice. I always have a choice. Um, and
Right.
I
But if
I
you have a
always,
choice, then why are you anticipating that it's going to come and I have to rejig my whole life to work around it?
because it's always good to anticipate something that you already expect.
Right. And that's kind of, I guess, where my question is leading to. Like, you're expecting to be depressed.
Yes.
So, is that the most useful way for you to live your life if depression is something you don't want to like deal with anymore?
I will deal with it when I'm there, um, and then I have a choice to either deal with it or not. But um, well, okay, here, and I know I'm sorry for giving this kind of answer. If I know that's coming, if I know that's going to rain, wouldn't it be prudent to bring an umbrella? And I think the answer is yeah, of course. You bring an umbrella and you open the umbrella only when it rains. And so so that's basically what I'm doing right now. After 10 years of going and analyzing and having therapy as well on this particular topic, I basically said, okay, well, I know it's coming because those are the identifiable cycles that is in my life. And I need to bring my umbrella. And when it rains, I know exactly what to do. That's where the choice comes in. When all of a sudden I feel, whew, this is gonna be heavy. Okay, let's do the exercises. Let's call my friend or let's call my accountability partner and says it's coming. Okay, and then he or she, because I do have over the years, I do have created a network of people that I can count on when that particular cycle comes. And I think that's one of the things that I've always recommended as well to some of my clients who are going through this particular phenomena, um, illness, if you will. I don't like the word illness, but phenomena, and to actually get a team or people that understands you to actually get involved with that, because it's coming. And so I've got my umbrella ready, and when it comes, let's go.
So I actually agree with your analogy, except you don't have a choice in whether or not it rains. You have a choice on what you do once it rains.
Correct.
And that's the big distinction here that I'm inviting you to consider. And I'm not just talking about this as like, you should think this way, you should think that way. Like, that's completely your prerogative and how you think. I'm actually talking about this as like somebody who's also suffered through and does not suffer from depression anymore. The inherent lens through which you're viewing depression is that I don't have a choice in it.
Oh
And my
no.
experience has been you don't get depressed, you focus into depression.
Mm. Well, okay, so I think we I don't know how you call this, but for me there is no choice. I become depressed, and that is a chemical imbalance, if you will, in the brain that happens. And it's maybe because of diet. I have no, I still don't know, but certainly, and it's indeed it's getting less and less. I'm not a proponent that I don't want to take medication for this. Although my doctor says, well, if you go through that, let me know and I'll prescribe you something. And I said, no, no, I just wanted to talk about this, about my cycles, and but I don't want to have anything for it. But yeah, so that chemical imbalance, I think, causes that particular trigger to say, okay, you know, and it happens now because of my awareness. I can sense when it is coming. It's almost like, oh, I see those gray clouds coming in, so it's gonna rain. I don't know when. You're right. I don't know when it's gonna rain, but I sense that I need to do something, and that's when.
Right. So basically, like what you're describing, I am prepared to cope with when it comes. And then everything that you mentioned as far as like the business also makes sense. Because if I have no choice on whether or not this takes me out, then I have to get good at coping with it, which you have been because you've been doing it for 10 years. And then obviously you're going to have to make business adjustments. So really, if you're powerless against the depression, then you're powerless against all of the results that you're getting in your business as well.
Mm.
And I guess my invitation to you here is like, do you even believe that it's possible for you not to be depressed?
That's a good question. I need to look into my brain, I guess, and find out why, the synapses are going the way it's going, and all of a sudden, I have those emotional states that is non-productive. And so I need to, I believe everybody who is actually depressed don't make a choice to be depressed. And I know that when I listen to Anthony Robbins, he says you don't have to be depressed. And then he gives you the exercise for smile, right? Do this, and are you depressed now? No, of course not. If you smile and you do this, but is that my authentic self? That's my question. Is that my authentic self? Because does my what is my real me?
Right. Well, when I asked you that question, you said happy, enthusiastic, celebrating life has an energy that other people find contagious.
Yeah.
So if that is the real you, then the mask would actually be depression. But the way that you speak about your depression, and I've been there, I understand it. So I'm not like anything I say here is not judgmental at
No,
all.
no, 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 I
It's
understand.
more to just really open up the possibility for you that the number one thing that's standing in the way of both the happiness that you're saying you want and the business results that you say you want is actually the inherent belief that I got no choice against whether or not I'm depressed. And I'm just inviting you to consider that from personal experience, there absolutely is a choice. And the choice is, do I start to believe that I get depressed and then I just have to cope with it, or that I focus into depression? Like, you're putting the choice, because your choice is I get to choose how I cope with it. What I'm inviting you to consider is the choice is actually on, do I get depressed? So what comes up for you when I share that?
Well, I think that's interesting that the choice, and I made a note of this, that the choice is a coping mechanism um, for not being depressed. So I need to really think about that. I think it's difficult to explain that the feelings appears. Now, as I said, I had some therapy around that. So one of the psychologists said, okay, well, let's dive into your childhood, shall we? And so we went into that childhood and the triggers that actually caused these particular feelings, if you will. Although there's more than that, I think. And what the root cause actually is for these particular states, if you will, and at what point in time in my life actually those particular states or connections within my nervous system actually started to happen. And it was kind of an interesting series of sessions, and that created more awareness for me, obviously. But it didn't eliminate the particular feelings and the states of being that I still continue to have.
Yeah. And I would agree with you 100% on that one. And even like in the process that I work through in the program, it's a 3-step process, like reveal, heal, and eliminate.
Okay.
And you're in the same position that a lot of my clients are, which is like you actually have a lot of awareness. Like, a lot has been revealed around why this thing happens, how it's connected to like when the wounding happened, all of the things from the past that make us who we are. Generally, that's where a lot of my clients are. They understand the pattern, they understand the problem, but that's kind of where it stops. It's the healing and the elimination that is the problem. So the way that I look at healing is, well, okay, I return to your wholeness. Like, even if you think about when you're physically sick, you don't like upgrade, you just return to where you were before you got sick.
Right.
So before these woundings happened, you were happy, enthusiastic with that energy that you described on who you would be without this pattern. So that part exists within you, and it is your authentic self. So you're not broken because you're depressed. You just haven't healed either the emotions and certainly not the beliefs. Like, that's already been clear, because you don't believe that you exist without being depressed. So there's definitely some limiting beliefs that haven't been healed. And then you haven't eliminated the ripple effects of that in how it shows up in other areas of your life. And this is, we talked about business, and that's generally where I talk about it. But that pattern of powerlessness, because you have an inherent belief of powerlessness around the depression, and then you have an inherent habitual pattern around powerlessness as far as motivation. Like, if somebody comes along that's external, that's the power I need to get up that hill, but I can't generate that myself.
Right.
Right. So it's, your issue isn't in the revealing, it's actually in the healing and the eliminating. And what I'm inviting you to consider is, the first place, if you do want to move into that space, is just to be open to the possibility that actually a reality exists where you don't have to be depressed. You can tap into your power. And that is actually the more authentic version of you. You just have to delete the parts of you that are stopping that from expressing.
Well, that's yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, it's certainly an interesting perspective. Now, through our therapy sessions, though, we've also identified that this may be a generational syndrome, if you will. Uh,
Hmm.
so the healing and eliminating, that's interesting. So, um, all right, I'll take that. I'll take
Okay, fair
that.
enough. Well, again, I appreciate the open-mindedness with which you bring into this, because I know how difficult depression is, and I know how, because it's one of those tricky ones where the nature of the affect is I'm powerless against this, and then that's also what perpetuates the fact that you stay in it. So I understand that hamster wheel very, very viscerally. um and again, it's why I'm kind of not harping on it, but why I'm just sharing that is the inherent root, that the resistance and the protection always loops around, that you don't have the power. So it always goes into, well, it's because of my upbringing, it's because of my synapses, it's because of an imbalance, it's because it's more powerful than me, I've had this for 10, like there is an endless amount of stories that are always going to give you very clear, true evidence that's not actually useful as to why I have to continue to live this way.
Right.
So the fact that you're able to stay here and be open to hearing something that directly opposes that part, and then every time we oppose that resistance, it's always a trigger. I just wanted to commend you for it, because I know it's not an easy spot to be in.
Well, thank
Um,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, so not so long ago, I would say about 6 years ago or something, I made the decision that I will not make any excuses anymore to be depressed, okay, or to have that particular state of being at that particular time or cycle. Because of the stigma of depression as well. Because people, well, as we already said in the beginning, is that it's usually overlooked. People don't see this, and in my experience with other entrepreneurs as well, uh, it's not being talked about.
Yeah,
And so, but it's real, as you said as well, it's a masking, and we're playing our part in it. So for me, the authentic self is important. So yeah, I'm open to actually dive a little bit deeper into, okay, who is the real me then? Yeah, I agree.
beautiful. Love it. Well, I mean, that's actually a perfect way to segue into an end, because I do have
Okay.
a hard stop for this. But Roy, thank you very much for coming on and allowing yourself to be witnessed in this way, and staying open-minded to it. So yeah, I mean, why don't you just close us off and let everybody know where it is that they can find you?
Oh, that is a good question, Rascal. They can find me on my LinkedIn page. So it's, go to LinkedIn and it says Roy Vandermol, and you'll find my beautiful picture there. And and that's basically all I do. I usually get clients through word of mouth, and I have a specific coaching program as well that really focuses, not eliminating, but certainly addressing issues like this. Um, but most of my focus would be collaboration with Rasko Rajcevic. Do I pronounce it
Yeah,
correctly?
that was actually pretty good.
Okay, all
That
right.
pronunciation was very nice.
I would, it's that's one of the things, one of my strong points as well, is collaboration and working together with people. And as I said, when I got your email, I was very impressed with it, and the sequencing as well, etc. So it would be wonderful to stay in touch with you, Drasco, and continue on our conversation.
Absolutely. The feeling is mutual, so thank you very much for that. And yeah, definitely we'll put the link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. So yeah, so thank you very much for coming on, and for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.
See ya.